And now, it's with fear and trepidation that I hand over to my best man and new stepson, Harvey.
Just before Harvey, who is the best man, I do notice that there's a lot of young ladies all lining up to watch him do this. Hey! Harvey!
Hey!
Okay, I've never done anything like this, so please excuse me if it's a bit, I don't know.
No problem, mate.
Yeah, probably a good idea. Okay. When Neil came and asked me to be his best man, get him to the church on time and then say a few nice things about him at the reception. I told him that although it was a great honour to be asked, I kind of felt he'd be better off with someone else. Then he offered me 20 quid. I said, I'm not that easily bought, Then he offered me 40 quid. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Boys and girls, as most of you know, my name is Harvey, and it's my pleasure today to be Neil's best man. Oh. I've tried to memorise his speech, but unfortunately, I haven't. So please excuse me if I have to look at my notes every few seconds. Firstly, on behalf of the Maid of Honour, Mel, and Mum's other helping friends, I'd like to say thanks to Neil for his kind words. You You have all done a great job today and look fantastic. Nearly as amazing as my mum. I think my mum looks stunning today, whereas Neil just looks stunned. I'd like to propose a toast to the Maid of Honour and friends, or usherettes as Mum's been calling them. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Maid of Honour and the usherettes. The ushers, Spen and Neil, have also done a good job today. Having a wash, putting on a tie, and remembering to shave. So, ladies and gentlemen, the boys.
The boys!
I think my duties as best man are to get Neil here on time, which is definitely a first. Sober, which is unusual. And smart, which is unheard of. Well, I think I've been successful on the first and last ones. I was actually given a best man's checklist, but after reading it through, I have to admit that some of the things mystified me a bit. A. Help the groom get dressed. Thanks, but no thanks. If he hasn't learnt how to do it himself by now, then there's no chance. B. Ensure Neil goes to the toilet. Again, I refuse. Make sure his face and hair are in good order. Well, God couldn't do it, so what chance do I have? D. Best speech you've ever heard. Flies are done up. I feel perhaps that his mother would be more suited as best man. Sorry, F. For those of you who don't Neil so well, I will try and give you a little overview of what he's about. For those of you who do know him well, you have my sympathy. Neil was born at a very early age, about the size of a baby, on the 14th of August 1976 at Frimley Park Hospital in Frimley. I did ask his mum and dad if they had any cute photos of Neil to show everyone here today. There was one of him lying naked on a sheepskin rug, in front of the fire, eating a chocolate biscuit and dribbling. I was going to bring it and show you all, but I thought it might have been a bit too embarrassing, as he was 21 years old. Growing up, Neil was a slow starter. Later, he was different from the other 5-year-olds. He was 11. It's fair to say that Neil wasn't the teacher's pet. One of his old school reports says, Neil was an ideal pupil who excelled in most subjects. Oh no, sorry, that should read, Neil was an idle pupil who was expelled from most subjects. His friends started to worry about his music tastes after finding him in his possession a favourite of his, Stargirl by McFly. If you ply him with enough alcohol tonight, you may be lucky enough to witness his rendition and choreography, leg slides included. When Neil left school, he joined his dad for an apprenticeship in printing, where he excelled at the job. In fact, he was such a hard worker, I believe he is described as God at work. This is because no one ever sees him, he makes his own rules, and it's a miracle if he does any work. But all that aside, as my grandpa said, me and my mum are very proud of him for going back to college to retrain as Super Mario. Oh no, wait, sorry, I mean a plumber. It's easy to get confused, especially when you see him in his blue dungarees and little cap. I'm still not quite sure where Mum met Neil, but I do know that she is an animal lover. Always the first one to come to the aid of some poor helpless creature. Which I guess is why we're here today. Neil somehow managed to secure a first date, and unbelievably, my mum agreed to go out with him. I don't know where he took her on their first date. He hinted at me that it was an expensive restaurant. He wants to keep it a secret, so the place remains special only to them. All I know is that night he wooed Mum with that immortal line, if you're on the menu here, you'd be McGorgeous. Let's be fair though, Neil does have his many good points, and one of those is that he can always take a joke. Mind you, so can Mum, as she's taken Neil. Neil also likes to think of himself as a strong, brave and manly man. Well, I can let you into a secret or two, as this will probably be my only chance. As most of you know, the three of us went travelling a couple of years ago and saw some amazing sights and fabulous places. One of the places we went was to Queenstown, New Zealand, which is the home of adrenaline junkies. What better place to show off your manly aura? Mum and Neil decided to do a bungee jump, the longest one in the world and newly opened at the Nevis Arc Swing, which falls from a platform precariously balanced over 180 metres above a canyon. I stood up on the safety of the platform, watching themselves get harnessed up, Neil still acting big and brave and manly. Then it was time to go, the drop. Neil's face was not only a picture, Neil screamed like a girl. Not just a little scream, but all the way from the top of the platform to the other side of the canyon. In fact, he even had to take a breath halfway down to carry on the scream. I do, in fact, have video evidence of this if anyone fancies a laugh later. Also, Neil fancies himself a bit of a fisherman. Apparently, better than Robson Green's at extreme fishing.
Oh, yes.
Apparently, anyway. He told me how he could teach me a thing or two, and so, on New Year's Eve 2008, we set off on a little boat just off Daydream Island in Australia. In short, he caught nothing. I, having never fished before, got 2. And when it came to getting off the hook, again he squealed like a girl. There is also video evidence of this, with the backing track of Mum laughing her head off. I've had to put up with Neil for nearly 3.5 years now. Sometimes annoying, a willing watcher of The Simpsons, and old repeats of Ronnie Fools and Horses. Often a partner in crime, and today with pride, Neil's best man. In that time, I've come to realise for me, he is someone you can rely on, apart from timekeeping and fishing, and is a good friend. Now, I was told I should add some words of wisdom for the happy couple. Quite difficult, considering I'm only 11 and Neil is now my role model. So I looked up a little bit of advice in a book for both of you. There's 2 secrets to keep your marriage brimming. 1, when you're wrong, admit it. 2, when you're right, shut up. Before I go, I'd like to ask Neil and Mum to participate in this little speech now. Mum, if I can ask you to put your hand out flat. Yes. That's it, palm down. Palm down. Right. Neil, if you would please place your hand directly on top of Mum's. Yes, just like that. Okay. There we go, Neil. I want you to make the most of this moment, as it's probably the last time you'll have the upper hand.
That's pure gold, isn't it?
Good luck to my beautiful mummy, especially for agreeing to marry Neil. I can assure you he snores like a hippo with a cold. And she's agreed to put up with it for the rest of their lives together. So, Mum, I have a little present for you. What's that? It's nice. And Neil, there's a present for you too. It folds out, it's fairly comfy. It comes with a duvet and pillow, and you'll find it already made in the cellar. On that notice, I'd like to thank Neil. It's been an honour to be your best man. My mum for just being my mum, and I wish both of you every happiness for the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I now ask you to raise your glasses in a toast to Neil and my mum. We wish them well for the future and hope they enjoy a long and happy marriage. Woo! To Neil and Sam.
Anything to say, Neil?
Bars open.